Hey everyone, welcome to our first conference celebrating resistance, decolonial justice for Palestine and beyond. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Azim, and
my name is Celine.
And we'll be your MCs tonight. Before we begin with the programming, I would like to acknowledge whose land we're currently on. Of course, with this program, it's important because the Palestine issue is connected to indigenous land, so we have to pay homage to whose land we're currently sitting on. In 1855, the Kalapuya people were forcibly removed to what are now the Grand Ron and Siletz reservations, and are now members of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ron Community of Oregon. And yeah, we just need to acknowledge that we're whose land we're on before we start the event. So a little bit about our group, Students United for Palestinian Equal Rights, or SUPER. Just had our first anniversary actually a month ago, and our aim is to educate and raise awareness about Palestine. We strive to approach this cause from an intersectional and international lens, with the hopes of creating solidarity amongst other marginalized communities in Oregon and around the world. In doing so, we thought it would be really powerful to host a two-day conference highlighting this issue. And this event was really special, or these 2 days are really special, because it was put on entirely by undergraduate students, and if y'all help, can you please take a stand? And also, this would not be possible without all our sponsors. So it's like a big sponsor list, but I'm going to read them out because this wouldn't be possible without them. The Muslim Student Association, the Asian Pacific Cultural Center, Native American Longhouse, the Central Cultural Cesar Chavez Pride Center, the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, SUPER from Portland State, King Legacy Advisory Board, METRA, Office of Institutional Diversity, School of Language, Culture, and Society, and Americans United for Palestinian Rights. On your tables, you all should have a schedule of our presentations for the next 2 days. Today is centered around art as a form of resistance, and today's keynote will be filmmaker Nancy Mansour, followed by a few spoken word performances by OSU faculty and students. Tomorrow will be a day filled with presentations and workshops. It starts at 12 p.m. with Abby Martin and Mike Preisner serving as our keynote, and ending around 5 or 6 p.m. with a spoken word performance by Palestinian poet Remy Kanat.
So we'll begin with our keynote, Nancy Mansour. Nancy Mansour is a community organizer, hip-hop artist, manager, and radio host for over 12 years. In 2009, she co-funded Existence in Resistance, along with Ayman Saeed, an internationalist organization promoting intercultural solidarity and nonviolent resistance through the arts, and with focus on occupied Palestine and inner-city youth. Existence in Resistance has conducted tours to Palestine for the past 9 years, more recently focusing on the Black communities in the West Bank and the 48 territories. They organized a hip-hop tour with M1 of Dead Prez to Palestine, and subsequently made the documentary Hip Hop is Bigger Than the Occupation. They are currently working on a documentary called Being Black in the Holy Land. And now we'll have
Hi, this is it. All right, that's better anyway. My name is Nancy Mansour. I am a Palestinian, born and raised in London, originally from Haifa and Nazareth. Before I start, I would like to say that anybody that thinks that we are here because we're anti-Semitic needs to get re-educated, because Palestinians are Semitic people. We have no issue with religion. You can always tell the people that don't clap, right? We have no issue with religion. It's not about Judaism, Islam, Christianity. This is about an ideology called Zionism. And white supremacy and Zionism go hand in hand. Nothing closer than that bullshit. Anyway, moving right along. I did co-found an organization called Existence is Resistance in 2009. with Ayman and Sayed out of New York, and we take youth and artists to Palestine every year, and we do workshops with the kids in the refugee camps. We did a documentary with M1 Adeb Press called Hip Hop is Bigger Than the Occupation, and since 2012, we've been traveling more and more around the West Bank in different places in 48 being Israel proper. And we realized that there are many communities of black Palestinians that nobody really talks about. And so we started making a documentary called Being Black in the Holy Land, which covers all the different communities that we have in Palestine and 48 territories that are black. So I wanted to show you a little presentation. We are currently finishing the editing of the film. I want to shout Mark Lamont Hill and Stacey Mohammed, who are backing the film, and they are editing. And so we're looking forward to maybe coming back and showing you the actual film, which is going to be very powerful. So, technical difficulty. Which one is it? Oh, perfect. I will shout out Abby Martin and Mike Preisner in the back there. They came with us in 2016 to Palestine. All right, so there's a bunch of different communities. There's the Afro-Palestinian Society. They call themselves the Afro-Palestinians. Are in Jerusalem because they've been there from Africa about 3 generations in. And they came, some of them as pilgrims, and some of them came to fight in the resistance with the Palestinians. There is Tulkarm refugee camp, which I'm going to show you in a moment. That's all black Palestinians, and predominantly it's about 95% black Palestinians. Ain Duke is in Jericho. That's all black Palestinians. There are black Bedouins in Rahat, which I'll show you in a moment also. And Ethiopian Jews who Israeli citizens who go into the Israeli army. We've managed to get a couple of, I wouldn't say interviews as such, but interviews, kind of. Sudanese and Eritrean refugees. Does anybody, can I just get a show of hands, who knows about the Sudanese and Eritrean refugees in Halot, in the open air prison? Okay, good. I'm going to talk about them. And then there are the black Hebrews in Dimona who moved from Chicago to the desert. The Dimona is very close to Halot in the south, the Negev, as they call it, Naqab. Okay, let's start. Rahat. Black Bedouins who, basically, Israel's trying to wipe out the Bedouin community to build settlements for people moving from the States and other places into Israel. And they're trying to wipe the Bedouin communities out. And I don't know if you follow any of the news out there, and you've seen people have their homes demolished over and over and over, and then they rebuild and they get demolished again. This has been a situation for these Bedouins in particular in Rahat, who moved to Rahat and got offered a city. It's actually the only, or the biggest city that is recognized by Israel as a Bedouin, as a city in Israel that is all Bedouins. There is a lot of racism, believe it or not, in Rahat. The light-skinned Bedouins do not treat the black Bedouins very well. That's going to be it will show in our documentary. The light-skinned Bedouins are living in extremely nice houses. It's a little bit like the PA and the rest of the people, the Palestinian Authority and then the rest of the people in Palestine. But they live in really nice houses, and then the black Bedouins are living in shacks, and basically all the garbage is dumped down on them. So our next project for this year's tour is we're actually building a community center and playground for these kids in this city. Tulkarm refugee camp, we did this mural for them last year. Tulkarm, here we go. 21,000 people. Many of them are from cities like Haifa, Jaffa. These are all the cities. Who's been to Palestine? If I say 48, who's been to 48? All right. So basically, a lot of the refugees that live in these refugee camps are from major cities like Haifa, Jaffa, Akka. These Palestinians in particular are from Qasariya, Jaffa, and Haifa. One of the most densely populated refugee camps in the West Bank, and was established in 1950 like many of the other refugee camps. Again, overcrowding, unemployment. Many of the refugee camps in Palestine have UN funding. And this is something I've been talking about recently too, that like, I feel like the UN is just sustaining or enabling the occupation to continue. So we put a lot of money into UN projects, but the UN just gives them rice, oil, and shitty schools. I mean, that's basically what it is. I know people are like, oh, but they're helping them eat. They don't need food, they need freedom. There's a big difference. So we have done the Gaza run and things like that with the UN, but we're actually not supporting that anymore. And that's my view. I feel like somebody said it once. I don't know if they said it to you, Abby. Was it when they said that they made the mistake of allowing them to build stone houses instead of the tents? Because once they made the stone house, it was like, we're going to stay here. You know what I mean? Whereas if they were in tents, it would have been, maybe it would have been a little bit different. So they provide healthcare centers, one healthcare center for 27,000 people. So you could, I don't know if you can imagine what that's like. The schools are 50 kids in one classroom, very overcrowded. Tulkarem, this is Fadwa, she's going to be in our documentary, amazing woman, very powerful, and is very, very aware of the racism and white supremacy in the US, and she talks about that in the documentary as well. Aina Duke in Jericho, many are from Sudan, Chad and Nigeria, who came hundreds of years ago when it was just desert land. They built up their community. There's about 1,900 of them, a little over 1,900. And Israelis actually hire them to do a lot of labor work in Israel. So they get, it's very hard to get permits to go into the 48 territories on the Israeli side. And young, I'm talking about young, I met 14 and 15-year-olds that are like working in Israel instead of going to school, in restaurants and factories and all types of craziness. And actually, I just want to point out, these photographs were taken by the kids. This was one of the workshops that we did, and so they had to take pictures of each other. And so these are actually photographs taken by the kids themselves. Halot. Let's talk about Halot. So, in the desert, right by Egypt, there is a big open-air prison. They don't like to call it a prison, Israel. They just say it's a detention center, although they've never let anybody in to do any kind of human rights reports on it. There's no real health center. Their ID cards say Israeli Prison Service. I'm kind of like, all right. So the brothers, Mutawakkil in the top here has been keeping me updated, literally is up to like yesterday, text me. What's happening there is basically Eritrean and Sudanese refugees are coming into Israel, being trafficked in by Egyptian Bedouins who tell them, we'll get a better life for you in Israel. And they pay them $30,000. I've met people as young as maybe 13 that came across the border. As soon as they get across the border, Israel throws them in this open-air prison and tells them that they're free, but they have to sign in 3 times a day, biometrics, with their fingerprint. Which means there's nowhere close enough for them to go and come back and sign in time. And if they don't sign in, they go to prison for 3 months. But they're not in prison. Okay. So now what's happened is Netanyahu is shipping them out on March 16th is the date. He's paying Rwanda $5,000 for every African that they take. And he said he's going to send 20,000, I believe, if that's the right number. And so there's been demonstrations every single day around Halot and Tel Aviv and different areas to try and bring attention to this. Last month, Netanyahu then said, for the Africans that don't leave when the rest of them get shipped, because he's offering them $3,500 to leave on their own accord. So $3,500, I mean, if you can imagine how far is that going to get you in life, right? And he's offering them that to leave. What he's done now is he's said that any Israeli citizen, now mind you, this is the most democratic state in the Middle East. We have to keep that in mind. What they've done is they're offering $9,000 for every Israeli citizen that captures an African and gives it to the government. So basically he's got Israeli citizens bounty hunting African refugees. And so I would say this is a very urgent issue. So I would ask everybody to try and read up on it and bring as much attention as you can to Halod and what's happening there. Because they're literally, March 16th is the date they've put on shipping them out. And they're just sending them to their deaths. I mean, this young brother has told me of many of his friends that got shipped out a couple of years ago when Netanyahu did this and shipped out a couple thousand. Many of them died in Africa, between Libya and Rwanda and other places. So it is a really urgent issue, and we've been filming there for 4 years, so their stories will be told as well in our documentary. The Afro-Palestinian Society. So there are about 3 generations in. This is Ali Jeddah in the top there, and his son Bassem. Approximately 350 Africans in the African quarters. They're in Jerusalem. Has anybody ever been to the Afro-Palestinian Society in Jerusalem? Wow. Who's been to Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem? They're right next door to Al-Aqsa. They're literally, when you see clashes, when the Israeli army tries to come in, or does come in to Al-Aqsa, or the Dome of the Rock mosque, the Afro-Palestinians are the ones on the front lines there, because they're literally right by the gate. And so, where are we? Guards of Al-Aqsa. Yeah, they're the guards of they call themselves the guards of Al-Aqsa Mosque. There are some of them that joined the Egyptian army to fight. Yeah, this was during the Arab-Israeli War. They joined the Egyptian army and came into Palestine and decided to stay. So Ali Jeddah in the documentary talks about how when he came there, when his father came there, he came with the army and he decided to stay, and he feels Palestinian 100%. On their logo, it's actually the map of Africa and Palestine connected to it. So their story is very deep. You'll see that in the film, hopefully. Ethiopian Jews. The Ethiopian Jews are also currently demonstrating. There is extreme racism in Israel. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish. Like we said, it's not really about religion. It's just an ideology, a racist, fascist ideology. And so the Ethiopian Jews, when they came in, children in 1980 and 1981 had to go into re-education programs. The men had to be re-circumcised. The women were injected with birth control without their knowledge. And not a regular birth control that even doctors in Israel said they wouldn't use if somebody wanted birth control, because it has long-term effects on fertility when it's used. It's not one that is Depo. Is it on the Provera. Ethiopian Jews have been demonstrating. Many of them have been killed where Israeli citizens think that they're Arabs. And so there was a brother that got beaten to death with metal chairs in a mall or a bus station. I can't remember the location, but there's videos on YouTube that will show you. They'll think he's Arabic, they'll scream Arab, and then they'll shoot or beat people to death, and they've done that to Ethiopian Jews. There's also Ethiopian Jews in uniform that have been beaten on camera. You can watch it. They don't discriminate. They don't discriminate in Israel. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Muslim or Christian. And so basically with the Ethiopian Jews, it's been much harder to get them to speak to us out of fear. Even the brothers in Halod, it's very hard because of the fear that they have, because of obviously the Sudanese refugees and the Eritrean refugees are trying to get refuge. So they don't want to be on camera saying, oh, well, Israel's messed up and Israel's racist and Israel's, you know what I mean? So they're kind of tiptoeing, but they just want their rights, and they don't want to go home. The Ethiopian Jews, they're in the Israeli army, and I think it took them quite a while to be recognized even as Jews, just like the Dimona, the black Hebrews that are in Dimona also were not recognized until one of their people died in a clash with Palestinians, between Israelis and Palestinians, and there was a guy from Dimona there, and he got killed, and then Israel was like, oh, we'll give you citizenship. But before that, Israel said they're not real Jews, and they wouldn't recognize them, just for the simple fact that they were black. And so that's basically it. Our documentary should be ready by the summer. I really do urge everybody to keep an eye on what's happening in Halod. These brothers are young. Like, I'm talking about, I've met people like 12, 13 years old, and they are going to ship them off to Africa on the 16th of March, and they really need as much international noise and awareness as possible. So, you know, whether it's sharing something, you know, everybody's like, oh, it won't make a difference. Everything makes a difference, you know what I'm saying? Each one teach one. So just, you know, if you share a link, if you, you'll see them online, they have different groups, join their groups, you know what I mean? Let them know that you're in solidarity with them. Our next tour to Palestine will be around August time, where so we're going to be building a community center and a playground, hopefully, if all the funds are raised, for the kids in Rahat, the Bedouin city in the Nakab, the Negev desert. I really appreciate you all coming out. I know that we ran over and started a little bit late, so I'm cutting this a little bit short. You can check us out, existenceisresistance.org, or on Facebook, Existence is Resistance. And I really appreciate the love and support of everybody that brought me out here, and everybody in this room that's here for the right reasons. Thank you.
Cool, so we'll have a couple questions. Can Andrew, you want to be a reader for me? So just raise your hand and Andrew will get to you.
So my question is obviously directed at Ms. Mansour. This is kind of a question that I guess I had in mind when I came here, but as someone who's been very involved in Palestinian activism and just anti-racist activism in general, what's the most common anti-Palestinian / pro-Israeli argument you hear, and what is your refutation / response to that?
There's so many, because they have to keep changing them every time they can. I mean, Palestine didn't exist. But the Balfour Declaration that created the State of Israel says to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Right? Is there one in particular that you've heard? I mean, people talk about Hamas. Hamas didn't come in, Hamas wasn't created until 86, so let's talk about from 48. What's their excuse from 48 to 86? And Hamas is now not in charge, not running the Gaza Strip, so what's their excuse now? You know, they have to keep, it's like, you know, keep up with the times. Every time, you know, every time they get refuted, it's like they come up with something new. It's all frustrating. It's all frustrating because there is no excuse or justification for what they're doing. There is no justification for occupation. There is no justification for the massacres that they've committed on the Palestinian people. But, you know, any other questions? No? No?
Yeah.
Relative to West Bank Palestinians generally, how would you characterize the political affiliation, or if there is any, among the Black Palestinians?
It depends. So the ones, the Afro-Palestinians in Jerusalem, more toward, like actually Ali Jeddah did 17 years in jail for being with the PFLP. So the Afro-Palestinians are more PFLP. Everybody else, in all honesty, Palestinians in the West Bank, at this point now, I think the main focus is trying to get rid of the Palestinian Authority. You know, when you have a flower and you want it to grow, right? So like Palestine to me is like a flower and you've got these weeds trying to hold you down. You know, the Palestinian Authority is paid by Israel. And so if they don't do what Israel does, they don't get their money, right? So like, you know, Mahmoud Abbas, who's the Palestinian Authority leader, right, is building a $10 million guest house in Ramallah. Like, who's coming to visit you, bro? Nobody. But then you got to think about the way that it works, right? So the Palestinian Authority is only an authority until the Israelis come in. So say this is Ramallah and the Palestinian and the Israelis are coming in. They call and they say we're coming in, and the Palestinian authority have to go home and put on civilian clothing, leave their guns at home, and then come back out. What kind of authority is that? You know what I mean? So I think that for the Palestinians right now, political factions, like what people hear on the news and all this, it's not as big as they make it. Like, it's really not. Like, if you go there, you wouldn't even know there was political factions, to tell you the truth. Unless you go deep into the refugee camps, and if a political prisoner who went to jail at like 12 years old, 13 years old has come out 15 years later, they might put up flags of, you know, the PLO, or Fatah, sorry, or, you know, or Hamas, or whoever they affiliate with. But in general, I think the political climate over there is just about the Palestinian Authority kind of doing Israel's dirty work for it. Anybody else?
Thank you so much for coming. And in the beginning, you kind of stated why anti-Zionism doesn't really represent anti-Semitism. And I was wondering if you could kind of speak more to that and why those two terms have been like conflated together.
Zionism is a racist, fascist ideology, right? That hijacked Judaism, okay? It has nothing to do with being Jewish. I mean, what was his name? Joe Biden said it. He said, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. I'm not Jewish and I'm a Zionist. Right? A religion is a religion, right? And in all honesty, people that have an issue with Jews or Muslims, the books say the same thing. If you read, you could read all three and learn that for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't even realize like how ignorant they are when they judge somebody off their religion, right? Or their race. Like, what makes you better? Right? You cut me, I bleed red. I cut you, you bleed red. Period. That's it. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's got nothing to do with Judaism. There are Palestinian Jews. When people say the Arabs and the Jews, what about the Arab Jews? I hate that term, the Arabs and the Jews. There are Arab Jews. That ones that call themselves Israelis, the Mizrahis, the Sephardic Jews are all Arab. You know what I mean? There's Palestinian Jews living in the mountain in Nablus, right, in the West Bank. They're under occupation as well, and they're Jewish. There have been Jews in that land, just like there have been Christians and Muslims forever. So, you know, it's got nothing to do with religion at all, and we shouldn't get the two confused. It's just sad. It's Zionism and white supremacy both judge people by the way that they look, what they believe in. It's a sickness, really, to tell you the truth. I think it's a sickness. I honestly can't elaborate more because I really don't understand how somebody can have so much hate in their heart for someone because they don't have the same color skin as them, right? Or they don't, you know, go to church with them on a Sunday. Or, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. And people are extra ignorant because my family is a Palestinian Christian family from Nazareth. You know what I'm saying? So when people are like, the Muslims, no, we have no issue with Muslim, Christian, Jewish, we're Palestinian, period. And a lot of people say this in the documentary when I say to them, do you feel racism from Palestinians, like light-skinned Palestinians? They're like, no, we're all Palestinians. When the Israelis come to kill us, we're all Palestinians. When, you know, in our ID card, we have, you know, it's all Palestinian, like it doesn't matter, it doesn't say all black Palestinian. It's like you're Palestinian, period. You know what I'm saying? So I hope that answered it, family.
Back there.
Is that mine? Oh,
Hello, I just have a quick question. I really liked your presentation. Thank you so much. So my question is, as an activist being involved in this cause, and you said you were born and raised in London. So what consequences do you face for being involved in this? And you travel back and forth in Israel every year and filming these things. Who's got your back? Who protects you?
God, no. Who protects me? I'm not doing anything wrong, bro. I'm doing everything right. I mean, yeah, I travel back and forth. I'm from Haifa, remember, and Nazareth, which falls in Israel. So, you know, yeah, I get strip searched, I get harassed, whatever, but yeah, I'm honestly not doing anything that there are actually Israelis doing, you know, that know what is happening is wrong, you know, so I don't see what they would be able to say. I mean, obviously they make shit up, right? They're like, oh, you're, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe after today I'm not. No, I don't. You know, my whole family's there, so I don't think that's probably.
I think like last question. Better move on.
I'll stand up. So I went to Palestine after my son was killed in the United States in one of those police things that happens here. I went to honor his life.
What's your son's name?
Tomas Governor. And I went as a pacifist because I had always been a pacifist. And I went with a Christian group and toured around and discovered many things. I have to say that I am sorry about your presentation because it isn't done often enough. The issue is not that, you know, some people say, yes, but you see, Jews were the original Christians and they represent us and this, what are you, nuts? This is a land grab, for God's sake. And no, but see, you don't understand because blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here and I actually didn't know about blacks in Palestine. And I have read a lot. I'm not ignorant. It is astounding how they managed to pull off setting up ideas so that we can hate the people at this table, can dislike the people at that table, who dislike the people at that table, and in the meanwhile, everything's being taken away from all of them. You can't tell this message often enough. It breaks my heart. I'm in a depression for over a year now. Do you all know why? It started with an election in the United States. I can't believe the stuff I hear on the news every day. Because if I put it in a book, people wouldn't buy it because it's unreal. The damage that's being done in Palestine is unreal. Because the US government supports it wholeheartedly. It breaks my heart. And thank you very much for what you said. You know, try to go home and make 10 of you. Who will go out
That's gonna be hard. Thank you so much. There is one more. While I get the mic over there, right over there. I do want to say that people should be very, very aware that our tax money, apart from the financial aid that Israel gets annually for regular crap, Israel gets $10.2 million a day from our tax money just for weapons. So the young sister who's a very good, her parents are very good friends of mine. I had Tamimi from Nabi Saleh. She's 17 now. When she was 16 in December, she was arrested by the Israeli army at 3 a.m. A few dozen soldiers ran in their house, as they do when they want to arrest children at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. They grabbed her out of bed and took her to jail, and she's been sitting in a jail. She had her 17th birthday in jail. And they did that because she slapped an Israeli soldier. The Israeli soldier was on her parents' property trying to come into their house to get on the balcony to shoot at more kids because he had just shot her 14-year-old cousin, Muhammad Tamimi, in the face a few minutes prior to that. Or his comrade, another soldier that was with him in the crew that were in their village at the time. But it's really important to know that every single bullet that hits these kids, all their military practices, because you know on Fridays it's like cat and mouse. It's literally the army comes to the villages in the middle of nowhere and shoots gas and fires live bullets and rubber bullets at the kids and uses skunk water, and the kids throw stones to keep them out the village, and then they shoot back at the kids. And this is all done without money, while schools are losing money here and people can't afford medical insurance. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, people just need to know where their money's going. You don't have to give a shit about Palestine. Just know that your money is being wasted on weapons for a whole other country. That it's just a game to them. It's like young, 18, 19-year-old boys with big guns running after young children who are from that land, trying to get into their village just to shoot at them. Like, they have no other business to be in that village. So they come there and provoke them on Fridays. It's a game for them. Just wanted you to know that. 10.2 million a day.
Oh, shukran. Thank you, Nancy, for your presentation. I must half of it. First of all, I'm Palestinian, very new here, and I want to bring something to this conversation, or to this lecture. First of all, I am in solidarity with everyone from all of those universes who are under the dictatorship or they're struggling for freedom and justice in Syria, in Egypt, in everywhere. And I feel myself one in this universe struggle, not just as a Palestinian. So I feel solidarity with the people now in Ghouta, Sharqiyya, and everywhere. Second, I want to bring one of the examples of discrimination inside the Israeli society. What happened after the assassination of Rabin? You know, Igal Amir, he is the one who assassinated Rabin, and he was Mizrahi, Sephardic. And all of the Israeli prime ministers, they are Ashkenazic. And all of the, now, more than 50% of the Israeli society are Mizrahim or Sephardic. So, and here it's become like separation inside the Israeli. It was very, very obvious, this separation inside the Israeli society. So at that time, the temporary prime minister, Shimon Peres, he decided to attack Qana. You remember that? In 1996, and he killed 200 civilians just to bring the Israelis together by fear. So Israel actually, and this is like shows how the Israeli society are very weak inside, but they use fear, and they use walls and all of those things in order to make those people.
Just to say, that's why Netanyahu murders a few thousand Palestinians in Gaza every time he's about to go up for election.
Yeah, of course, but this example is very obvious how the Zionist propaganda is trying always to bring Israelis, which I feel they are victim of Israel, like us as a Palestinian, is through fear and victimhood and feeling, oh yeah, and this is very much. And I think here is the responsibility of us, of all people, and also the Jewish society all around the world to stand against this kind of structure and the propaganda. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to say real quick, I have to run in a little bit because I have another talk tomorrow, so I'm going to do as many as I can everywhere, even if I'm doing it to myself. But I do have a table here. I just want everybody to know our organization since 2009 is grassroots. We silkscreen t-shirts ourselves. We bring the scarves, the original Palestinian scarves from Palestine, from Khalil, aka Hebron. And all the money that we raise from your donations goes towards our tours, and that's what makes all of this possible. So thank you so much again. I appreciate all of you.